Hello, everybody. How's it going? Nice to see everybody. Welcome to tonight's In the Know for A Doll's House, written and directed by this wonderful man over here, Justin Emeka. We're so excited. Thank you for coming out and braving the snow. How many people's backs hurt? Mine is killing me. Oh my God. I'm not used to that. It's been a while since I've been around snow, so that was a lot of fun. How many people have seen A Doll's House yet? Seen it here? Nobody yet. Oh my God. Okay, great, cool. How many people have ever seen A Doll's House? Any production of A Doll's House? All right, great. So we'll have some people who know, some people who don't. I'm going to embarrass Justin here for a second, and then we'll get into asking him some questions. This is Justin Emeka. He is our adaptor and director for A Doll's House. He is a director, writer, filmmaker, and educator whose career spans both stage and screen. He is the resident director at Pittsburgh Public Theater and has directed at institutions like the Old Globe, the Philadelphia Theater Company, Syracuse Stage, Seattle Rep, Juilliard, and the Classical Theater of Harlem. He serves on the executive board of SDC, which is the Stage Directors and Choreographers Union. And in film, he is a 2022 Drama League Fellow in TV and directing. He served as a shadow director on the Disney Plus series A Small Light. And his short film, Six Winters Gone, still premiered at the Black Harvest Film Festival in Chicago. And his second film, Biological, won the Best Short at the Kansas City Film Festival International. He is also a tenured professor at Oberlin College in Africana Studies and Theater. He is a wonderful thinker and maker and friend. And and his wife is also a judge in Ohio, and he was her campaign manager. So if you a man of many talents, all over the map. She won. Yeah, he is a winning campaign manager. So everybody, Justin Emeka, please welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's so great to be here with you all. Thank you all for taking the time to come out and talk theater. That's one of my favorite things to do, so it's good to have you here.
Awesome. So I always love to start with people to give everybody a sense of like how you got into this. Like, how did arts become the theater arts and performing and directing and all of this become part of your life?
Yeah, sure. Well, as a child, I was a very gregarious child, and I had very little stage fright fear. I didn't have any of that, so I kind of was the kid who, if they needed a cute kid to be up on stage doing something crazy, they could always get me to do it, and so I loved performing from a very early age, and just started to audition for anything and everything that I could. By like the time I was like probably around 10, 12, I would like read the newspaper and look for calls and auditions, At some point, though, when I got into college, I started kind of being a little frustrated with the things I could get called in to audition for as a light-skinned black actor who was kind of like too light to be a lot of dark-skinned characters that people envision, but too dark to be in white culture. So, didn't really quite know where my place was. And that's when I started writing more and directing more and thinking about who gets to tell stories, and wanted to just kind of have more of an impact in storytelling in that way.
That's amazing. And how did it become your career?
Yeah, that's a good. Again, since I was young, I knew that I wanted to be in theater. I wasn't all the way sure exactly what, but when I graduated from Oberlin College, I teach at Oberlin College, but I was also a student of Oberlin College, and I majored in Africana Studies, and then I moved to Seattle and lived in Seattle for 10 years. And started a little theater company, was freelance acting, freelance directing, just kind of doing anything that I could to keep me in proximity of a stage. And for me also, I write music, I play music. Theater, what I love about theater is it's the convergence of all art forms, film as well. In film and in theater, there's writing, there's poetry, there's visual arts, there's music, there's dance. And so they just kind of always allowed me to engage all of my passions, But I kind of decided probably when I was in high school that I wanted to make a profession of it, not even knowing what exactly that was, what a profession in theater looks like, and I'm still trying to figure it out, to tell you the truth. But I figure, if I keep going, one of these days I'm gonna figure out how to really make a living doing this thing. So
I mean, it's true. It's true. Some of the things you also teach like capoeira at Oberlin, so it's like in all the different disciplines. So like you balance so many different things from acting, directing, teaching, writing, film, dance. Like how do you balance all that, and how do you juggle it? And then also like how do you know like which path to follow? Because like there's so many different branches off that main route of like performance.
Yeah, I mean, the arts for me were really though like how I process the world. I mean, like writing a song, singing a song, and I mean, sometimes I'll pursue this lane and until I kind of get frustrated or kind of get one, and then I'll go to another lane, and pursue that until I kind of hit a wall or frustrated. Then I go back to the other thing, and now I have a new kind of inspiration. So I kind of like bounce back and forth, but all these different arts have kind of been helped me process the world, a lot. And so it's just kind of how I live. But what was what's the question? How do
you like balance all the
so
different
how do I balance them?
branches of it?
So a little bit, it's kind of like they call me, and I always kind of am of the belief that artists so often, like professional artists, we have a hard time making a living. So like how do you're working for that opportunity, you're waiting for that opportunity. Well, in between you should just be working on your craft and working on your crafts, plural, because you never know when you're going to get that opportunity, but when you get it, you want to be ready. And for me, I didn't know if it would come in music, if it would come in dance, but whatever. I just try and have as many skills ready as possible, so when the opportunities come to me, I can say, "Hey, yeah, I can do that." Mm-hmm.
That's one of the ways that I feel like I've introduced you in many places as a thinker, like a great thinker for the theater, because like your craft that straddles all these different disciplines is all about telling these stories, right?
Yeah.
And like you kind of have made a niche for yourself in the classics, yes. Yeah. So like why are the classics your jam?
Mm-hmm. It's a good question. So, I mean, one, yeah, I love stories. I love storytelling. When I was a kid, I had three brothers, and my brother a little bit older than me. We would play Dungeons and Dragons, and it's like this kind of story building game. But kind of quickly, I don't know if we couldn't afford the pieces or whatever, but we just started. He would just like make up the story, we didn't have anything, and he just started spinning these tales about Dungeons and Dragons, and he would say, well, so what do you want to do? You see a dragon, and it was just kind of this back and forth thing, that's what really my earliest kind of storytelling thing. I just loved finding ways to tell stories. What was the question again? I'm sorry.
That you're immersed in the classics. Like how did the classics become your thing?
So then, I mean, I kind of came up in the era of August Wilson. I loved August Wilson, Lorraine Hansberry as a black artist. They were a lot of my inspiration. When I started getting into directing, I was a pretty like young director at the time, in the 20s. When I was in my 20s, and in general, getting directing jobs is very, very difficult. There's not too many times that you see like director for hire signs. It's all networking. And I loved August Wilson, but everybody had their August Wilson director, every theater. And it was very hard to get in August Wilson, and so I was kind of frustrated. And then I went to graduate school for directing, and a professor suggested, well, hey, why don't you look at some of these classics? These classics keep getting done, keep getting done, but spin them your way. See how you might tell this story differently. So that's in graduate school is when I kind of got interested in doing that, and I did a version of the Scottish play, or Macbeth, if you all know. For my thesis, my master's thesis. And I remember I was so nervous because I did this whole like really exciting spin. It was like in the South during the Civil War. It was right after the Civil War, and the witches were newly freed African slaves, and Duncan was like an Abraham Lincoln figure, and Mac was like a General Sherman who went through the South and brought it to its knees, and Banquo was an African American freedman who could fight alongside but could only get so high, So I did a lot of history, and it was just a really strong concept. And when I went to the thesis board, I was like real nervous. I was like, oh no, they're gonna kind of rip me up or whatever. And but the professors were like, wow, this is really great, they quoted that they had a teacher that someone said, you can do Shakespeare, you can do Emeka, or you can do Emeka plus Shakespeare, but you can't just do Shakespeare. And I would actually like to see more Emeka in your Shakespeare. And it was like, whoa, more Emeka? I was like, oh, great, because again, I was like so nervous about like, well, I got to told this line, I got to told this line for Shakespeare. But, part of the fun of classical theater is bringing who we are today to the work. That's part of the art of dealing with classical theater, I think. And so that's what kind of launched me in and gave me permission really to see Black culture in the world of the play.
And it's fun is we actually met when you were doing that piece. We were at a fellowship at the Globe and did that piece with our MFA students, and it was like, this is so cool. This Scottish and this place, it was really fabulous. And I think like that's to me what's so exciting is like that Shakespeare 400 and something years old. Ibsen, 150 years old, but like we keep doing it, and there's a reason that these plays keep coming back, because I find them to be like the morality tales. Like these are the things, these are the cultural touchstones that we all know as humanity, but like we need to spin them in a new way. That's like we need to keep telling them for a new generation in a way. And the way that you engage with them makes them so fresh, so vibrant, and so like wonderfully new, because you the way that you think through the entire process of why this is here and why this is there and who these people are, and the way that you're talking about this figure represents this is really fascinating, because it also is very clear in your productions what the power dynamics are and why it's set in this space. So like I want to maybe use that as a way to jump off to talk about Doll's House. So like what for those who haven't seen A Doll's House, can you tell us a little bit of what the story that Henrik Ibsen wrote in 1879 while in exile from his native Norway?
Yeah, I mean, it was a revolutionary tale at the time, in that, it's about a woman, Nora, and her family, and her husband, Torvald, and they kind of living the idyllic, almost a nuclear family, and her husband has gotten a new job opportunity, and then it comes out that she's actually has a secret that she's been hiding from him, that she got money to save his life when he was really sick, that he never knew about, And so now somebody who has found out about it and is blackmailing her, and she's afraid of like it ruining her husband's life and her husband's career and opportunity. And so she spends the play, trying to like keep it from him until, he finally does find out. And there's a reckoning in their marriage, basically, about what's going to happen. And historically, like in the play, she leaves him, which was in 1870s. Norway was unheard of, for a woman to walk out on her husband and her children. And ironically, like when they took it to London was like, no, she got to stay. And so he wrote the end so that she stayed. And it didn't work as well, So that's the kind of overall story of A Doll's House.
In many ways, some of the famous phrases around the show, right, is that Ibsen is the father of the modern drama. Like we wrote naturalistic plays, like in the style of coming out of Strindberg, but like in a very, very naturalistic way that was new for the time. And Doll's House is also considered the first feminist play, because it centers around Nora, and she makes a decision for herself that is not based upon what her husband wants, in which of many of the dramas around that time were. And it's also, I think one of the things that's so fun is the phrase, the door slam heard around the world, Like, can you like the it's not really a spoiler alert because it's 150 years old, but the show ends with her slamming the door. And can you imagine that a play now having like a stage action that like caused a sensation across the globe for like one action, like one stage direction that like was changed the course of an entire art form.
Yeah, they say that's one of the most famous stage directions in all of theater is a door slams at the end of a Doll's House, because of what it was signifying in the context of the play, but also what it was representing outside in the world in terms of what was happening.
So that is Henrik's play. So your adaptation is what? What does it mean to adapt a play? And what did you do to the piece? What did you add to the piece? What did you keep from the piece? Like, can you go through your process of like how this became the story that you're telling here on this stage?
Yeah. So again, part of me is like process wise is reading the play over and over just to like get a sense of, okay, what is the heart of Ibsen's play, and like what moments resonate with me now and really speak to me. That's kind of where I start to try and figure out what its heart is. And for me, it was a lot about this kind of conservative patriarchy of Torvald is a very in these gender roles are very specific and a certain kind of conservatism, and this is what a family is supposed to look like. This is how a man and wife is supposed to function and all that. So then I try and think about, okay, well, where and when in our society does that resonate? Does that does that thinking really resonate? And for me, it led me to the 50s, where we did really kind of had this really pragmatic idea about what family is and decorum, and that everyone was working so hard to maintain that. That's also echoed in Ibsen's work, And then for me, I also always like to find a way to bring Black culture into the center of the story, because so often I feel like Black culture is often marginalized and we see it at the periphery, But I want to invite the audience to see themselves in Black culture that's happening at the center of a story, And so thinking about, well, the Black middle class in America has a long tradition, but oftentimes it's overlooked. And so I also wanted to kind of started thinking about Black doctors and Black lawyers, and just kind of looking at that history, and then also the immigrants, conservatism in terms of like where Torvald's like very kind of patriarchal view, how I might find that in today's world, and my experience with West Indian culture, with some immigrants that resonates with a lot of the thinking. So then I also wanted to have this varied Black cultural experience. I like showing the infinite possibilities within Blackness, because so oftentimes we think Black is just, oh, that's hip hop or that's jazz, and it's that, but there's a whole lot within Blackness, and so that's really where I started kind of weaving the whole story together. The world.
What's so wonderful, I think, about what you set out to do and accomplished is like every time you see one of these plays that is set in a very specific time in a very specific place and like hinges on the social mores of a moment, right? Like so much in A Doll's House is Nora's father is upset that she married Torvald, or she as a woman was not allowed to sign a banknote. These are things that I think as modern audiences, it's like you have to remember and keep reminding yourself that it's like, well, in a sesquicentennial ago, we had to, these were the rules, and these are the things, and a subtle difference in accent would mean a subtle difference in class. But I think what you've done is made all of these things much more clear by setting it in a time where not only all the things, the patriarchy and all the things make a lot of sense, but also it's that like a Black woman forging a banknote of her white father makes the ups the stakes, but also reduces the suspension of disbelief. Yes. So like you can see like, oh, she's in trouble.
Right, and so Nora in my production, so Torvald is a West Indian immigrant, who's been educated and went to law school, and Nora is a biracial woman who inherited this house from her white father, and so just the complexities there, in terms of the dynamics, that to try and again contextualize all the characters' choices in a way that people today can kind of understand and get. That's kind of the challenge is for the director for bringing it contemporary.
Mm-hmm.
And
So-
oftentimes I think that people will like find a moment in a play that, oh yeah, this works really good to bring it forward to this or to build a concept around this, but then 40% of the play or 30% of the play, it doesn't really, but we all just kind of like, what the heck, But I mean, I really like, I want the audience to believe the whole world, to believe the whole journey, so that the concept really fits every moment of the play. That's my goal as a director, writer, adapter.
It's why I refer to you as a great thinker, right? Because it isn't just the one idea; it is a totality. Because not only is it what Nora's going through, but Christine going through, Lind, her friend, who can't get in as a black woman trying to get into a law school, like that doesn't. She's shut out of that. So you can see all these different perspectives that are going through the show. All
Typically,
lead-
like one of Nora's old best friends has come into town, Christine Lind, and typically in Ibsen's version, she's a widow, and her husband has passed away, and now she's coming back to town to try and kind of get her life back together. In my version, Lind was never married. She was a black woman who wanted to go to law school, but applied 3 years in a row and never got in, and so they ended up being a cleaning woman just like her mother, and is trying to now find new life, so to speak.
So, like, with all that said, like, what makes A Doll's House pop today? Like, there was just a Broadway production a couple years ago with Jessica Chastain. Like, there's and also Ibsen's so hot right now. There's the Hedda Gabler movie that's coming out. That's out. Yeah. So, like, what is it about this play that like you think modern audiences need to hear?
Yeah. Well, I think one that it's a deep exploration of themes that we're dealing with right now, and one is like what it means to build a family and how to find yourself as an individual within that family, and how to balance the two, and when are you sacrificing too much of yourself within a family that it's time to go, or when is it time to hunker down and say no, I got to put those individual dreams aside and really hunker down in the family. That's a thing that every couple struggles with. And then also like how to love and be loved in the way that you deserve to be loved, and that's a challenge also for every relationship, that you might love me, but are you loving me in the way that I need to be loved? And do you even know what that is? And do I even know what that is? So just this deep exploration of love. And then of course, Nora in this journey to kind of claim and figure out who she is in a world that is telling her she's supposed to be just like this. And she's trying to fit into that until she's busting at the seams. And then what do you do in that moment? Do you tighten the seams? Do you break them out? And again, those are all things that we all have to deal with at some point in our life. And so this is just an offering, for the audience in that way.
So you're wearing two hats in the show as an adapter and a director.
Yes.
So how do you give yourself notes as a playwright from the director? Like, how do you work out? Like, is this my fault or is this your fault?
Yeah, it's a good, but part of it is like I've had a lot of experience, like editing Shakespeare, because every time I do a Shakespeare, it's a bit of an adaptation, So in that regard, it doesn't feel that new to me. I'm always kind of cutting, moving, pasting, and the process is a conversation with the actors of what works. Also, in terms of how things are working, I try and take advantage of my team. so to speak. And not that it's just me, but I get the artistic directors' perspective on things. I get my costume designers' perspective on things. I ask them questions. Well, is this resonating for you? How's this resonating for you? And then, but ultimately, I have to make the decision. And it's a challenge, like doing it, taking feedback, because once you open that door, everybody has ideas, about, well, what you need to do is, if you would just do such and such, but not feeling the pressure of having to serve everybody's expectations, but listening to them all, considering them, and then making a decision on my own based on that.
It's wonderful to hear you say that. It also asks it brings to my mind how you bridge the gap, not the gap, but the between educator and maker.
Yeah.
Right? Because it feels like there's a service to the history, a service to the thing, but then also a conversation of like what goes forward from here, and how do we take impart knowledge upon our students, but also take knowledge from our students.
That's right.
And so you do that in your day job and in your other day job. Like how do those things talk to each other for you?
Oh, very much so. I mean, but I'm very much of the mind that everything that you do should teach you how to do everything else that you love. So if I love teaching, and so teaching makes me a better director, and I love directing. I love being a father. I have 2 sons, and but being a father, directing should help make me be a better father, not a worse father. So trying to use all these different skills and things to kind of serve each other.
Excellent. Let me open up to questions from the audience here. If anybody has anything they'd like to ask Justin. Yes.
Yes, definitely. That's a great question, by the way. I would say it's hard to quantify, but I would say between 70 and 80% of Ibsen's storyline and what you come to see is there. But it's also like how you tell a story is equally sometimes as much the story in and of itself. So a number of his like servants and the nurse and the maid in the original Ibsen for me has been collapsed. I turned it into one character, which is Helen, which is Torvald's younger sister from Guyana. They're both from Guyana. And he's brought Helen here, and she's a self-taught cellist who's auditioning to be in Juilliard. And so that's all my convention. And a lot of it, the cello and the art was taken from my work with a student of Oberlin, who I met 12 years ago, who was an incredible cellist and did a lot of music for me. And so now she's here, Kaylin Bryant, playing Helen. And so I wrote the role with her in mind, knowing that she's an incredible musician and cellist. I'm excited for you all to see her work in there. Now, part of my job as a director is to create an environment where other artists can bring their artistry in and shine, and as a writer as well. So I'm very fascinated for me with just the question of what is the play, right? This is a question that I just always like, because the play is not the script. Right. The script is a literary form. The play is a living expression that happens that nobody can quite contain. And now we live in a society that wants to capitalize or commodify everything. But who owns the play is really, is really nobody can own the play in that regard, because you have it's a inherently, essentially communal thing, that you get a literary piece from playwright, but now each one of those actors, their job is not to do the play that was in the playwright's head when they were sitting in a room writing it, particularly if it was 200-300 years ago. Nobody knows what that is, right? Their job is to bring who they are to the piece in a way that illuminates these characters. And nobody knows what that's going to be until we get to the first day of rehearsal and read, and we put those ingredients together, and it's like, wow, this is what Torvald sounds like, and this is Nora sounds like, and now we're putting the pot together, and we got to mix it up, and bring and make discoveries that the playwright could have never known, because we didn't know what was inside of this actor. So you got to leave room for that, while still, though, holding on to the bones and the structure of the story. And so it's a delicate balancing act, but that's the art, that's the craft, and that's what I love to do.
Yes.
Springboarding off that answer, can you talk a little bit about your background in music and composing and the role that music plays in this version of The Doll's House?
Yes, thank you for that question. So I don't fancy myself as like a great musician. I mean, I started playing guitar when I was like 13, 14, just because I had songs and play songs that I like to sing, and then start writing songs. So, I play, and then I started playing trumpet in college because I like the sound of the instrument. And so, I kind of get through it, but I'm not like a virtuoso with it. But I can kind of explore musical ideas on it. Now, as a director, for me, when I'm like world building, oftentimes I start with the music, and I'm like thinking, okay, what's the music that these people in this world listen to, sound like, So, and not always, but I bring a lot of who I am into what I do. And so I was also born in Englewood, New Jersey. And so that was partially why I was like, and we're doing it in Red Bank. So a little bit like, well, what is it to loosely think about New Jersey in the 50s, but without trying to say I'm trying to recreate history. As it's a poetic realism, which I think all these plays are. I mean, Shakespeare wasn't writing about anything specific. All of it is poetic realism, So I kind of just let myself inform different things about who I am, and I listen to the music, get ideas for this piece. I was listening to a lot of Nina Simone, and artists who are like taking white forms and Africanizing them, or bringing black culture to them, like John Coltrane's My Favorite Things. Hearing that, just because that's what I see myself doing in theater, in Ella Fitzgerald, and people, Sarah Vaughan singing My Funny Valentine, where you take these quote unquote white Broadway classics, but then you let black culture invite them into it, and you create a whole new dimension that doesn't replace what was done, right? It just creates expands the reach. And that's how I see what I'm trying to do in theater.
Are there any other questions? Anything else for Justin? Yes. Again. Thank you.
About adapting the classics and seeing the classics.
Yeah.
It seems like it's gotten harder to see professional editions of the classics, whether it's a warm stage reading or a full production like this adaptation of Doll's House. What's the solution for that? Because I do think the audience has a real hunger for seeing the classics reinterpreted. It's very expensive to do them because of a big cast. And this
Yes.
both the Justins. How do we get more exposure to the classics, not just at Two River Theater, but generally in the theater at Oberlin or wherever?
Well, I mean, I guess I would push back a little in that, like, Shakespeare, every year, Shakespeare is by and far the most produced playwright in the world, still. And I think Ibsen does pretty well in terms of, in terms of getting productions. But this idea of, again, of like, what does it mean to do Shakespeare, to do Ibsen in 2026 is a real kind of question / meditation, and what do we do with the material now? And I now, how do we see more? Like, I think theaters have a balance, right? Because some people, they come to the theater because they know Hamlet, and they say, Hamlet, yeah, I'm gonna come, but they come with expectations, and it's a fine line of like, okay, how much we gotta give them Hamlet, you know what I'm saying? But we also want to give them a little bit in a way that maybe they haven't seen, And
Yeah,
that's
if you do Hamlet and you do David Garrick, I don't think people are going to be that excited.
yeah, I mean, so it's a balancing act, of like how much we think we can challenge our audience. But I'll say that, I mean, for me as a black artist, I often lament. I feel like artistic directors are very scared of the thing that I do, in terms of like bringing black culture into the world, because there are people who say, well, who are you to do that? Who are you to say that you can bring that? Shakespeare never wanted that, But I think, again, we have to like trust our audiences, and there are a lot of people who are hungry for that. And we're not going to please everybody. There's, no show is going to have everybody walking out saying that was exactly what I wanted to see from this production. So like where we take calculated risks, but artistic directors have tough things to navigate. They trying to meet that bottom line. They trying to make the money back. And so again, and then largely audiences are largely white, older audiences. And so you got to say, well, are they going to be with us? Are they going to be down for it? So there's a lot of things that go into the choice. But again, my thing, I want to make high level stuff that people are hungry for, because I think that people are hungry for it, as you say, and so that's what I'm just trying to feed to people.
Yeah, just to go. I mean, Justin said so many beautiful things in that. Just a couple of things that I would throw in are like, one of the great gifts that Justin gave us is that this Helen character conflates two roles, and also that the children are no longer there, so like that's 4 bodies out of the show, and that's no joke, tens of thousands of dollars for like what amounts to maybe 6 minutes of stage time in the Ibsen show. So like when you have an adaptation like that, actually that allows you to do it. Like that really, like that's the delta between being able to produce the show and not, and there's a lot of shows that I love, and then you read the character count and you're like, it's 26 people, and like it's a lot of money. So like in the economics of what you're trying to do, you also have to like factor that in. But also from an artistic director standpoint, like not to make it about me, but you get one. You get one. Like in your career, you get one Doll's House. You got to do it once. You're not going to be every time you go. You're going to recreate a Doll's House every 6-7 years. You want to do it because you're like, dude, that's rad. Like that excites me. Like there are the plays that you're going to do in your career, and you're going to wait, and you're going to do it when there's the right person at the right time, there's the right idea, when the mood strikes and everything kind of lines up. Because there are dozens and dozens and scores of these great plays that you can make a list of that Justin engages with. We've talked about many of them. There are other shows that we talked about before we talked about Doll's House. But then when we landed on it, we were like, this feels right. And also, we could get the rights because he's dead. So there's all these different things that you have to think of before you do it. Because there's times that things are tied up, and you're like, I would love to do X, Y, and Z, but I don't know, so and so's doing it on Broadway, and the first class rights are tied up.
Justin now has the rights to this adaptation.
This is now his. Yeah. Woohoo! Yeah. So we're creating jobs.
That's not only just, but you got the judge.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
But also, like it's a great question because like there's always the times that you're like, hey, wouldn't it be great if we did blah blah blah? But then you're also, um, is that the one that you want to do, and is that the time to do it, and is that the artist that you want to do it with? And that's what we are all. We talk to a lot of people, and a lot of artistic directors are talking to a lot of different artists, and they're like, hey, that's the person I want to do long days, because you get one. You're not doing it every other year. And then you look back also at the theater's history. This theater, I got here 3 years ago when this theater was 30 years old and has a history of doing a lot of great plays. So you also have to look through, be like, comb through to what has your audience seen and what has your audience not seen. Because like we can say, oh, dude, we could totally do, I don't know, you can't take it with you. That was the first show that this theater ever did. So like, are we going to do it again? How long do you wait till your second you can't take it with you? Did you take it with you?
It's a long time, huh?
Oh my God, it's one of my favorite shows.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes.
Great. I'm looking forward to seeing the show on Friday. And my question isn't quite formulated, but I'm going to try to get there as quickly as possible. But one thing that I hear a lot, and I respect it a lot and I appreciate it, is the impact of theater in terms of helping to create empathy. Coming to see shows and having an opportunity to place ourselves in stories and see our humanity. And I was just curious about what your take is on what's happening right now in our world. Because when you look outside at the realities of what's happening, it's some crazy stuff going on.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Crazy, right? And so I constantly come up with this thing of, I used to say this. I used to say, people will go see a movie like Star Wars, or let's just say, what was it, Star Trek, and they'll be so, you even mentioned Dungeons and Dragons, they will get all this education and information and insight, and be so, they'll get these messages that are very powerful in terms of accepting others, and and then you wake up the next day, and you don't see that being implemented in people's relationships, or how things are happening in the world. And I always find, sometimes I wonder to myself, what's the disconnect? What's the disconnect? And I hate to use this, but I'm going to use it as a real example. I don't talk a lot about race that much these days because I'm really not interested in having a conversation where I feel like people don't want to listen. So recently we had one of the biggest movies that I saw, Sinners, the Mexican movie, and two people from that movie were on stage,
Oh yeah.
and the N-word came out from someone who had Tourette's. And again, understanding all that. But what gets me is that there has not been any public apology to those two gentlemen on the impact of what happened. It's not to say that mechanically or mentally that I understand the condition.
Yeah.
But the empathy is going all towards understanding the condition. And I've been reading articles about what black culture has to withstand and saying that we don't want to be graceful.
Yeah.
And so in terms of this play, with the cast that's going to that it has, those things are there. Those tensions are going to be looked at. Ibsen's history versus now in the 50s. And so I was just wondering about your take on what's happening in our world, in America specifically.
Well, I do think we struggle with seeing ourselves in places we don't expect to find ourselves. And so we kind of have this idea of, okay, this is where I can see myself, and we're going to what's comfortable. And that the arts, though, the function of arts, though, is to invite us to see ourselves in ways that challenge our own notions of how to see ourselves. And in West Africa they had a role called the griot, right? And the griot's job was to remember the stories of the people and to tell the stories back to the people whenever they were in jeopardy of forgetting who they are. And for me, that's the role of the artist is. That's what we do. We tell stories so that people don't forget their humanity. That's our function. And it's not like a quantitative thing. It's not like, okay, I tell this story and now you remember everything. It's not, it's more abstract than that, But I think now we do need artistic movements that is teaching us to love each other. I mean, that for me as an artist, as a director, and you can Camille, my assistant back there, hear me talking about. I talk about love all the time. Like all these characters got to be rooted in love. I want to present people that the audience wants to fall in love with, even though they're flawed. You know, because how that we can love each other and be flawed. That's the challenge of our country right now, right? It's like, no, flawed, I can't love you. Or in order to love you, you have to have no flaws. Or how much flaws can we have? Can we excuse? And again, it's a tricky thing. But I do feel like, so again, the work that I'm trying to do is to try and invite audiences, largely though, to see themselves in Black life, you know, and to center, because oftentimes the universal, when we talk about the universal experience in America, it tends to be white experience. That's just kind of what our default is. But within every culture, there are universal archetypes that you can see. And you know, Lorraine Hansberry said that, you know, oftentimes people mistake and think that you have to be non-specific to be universal, but the opposite she finds to be true. The more specific you are, the more you invite people to see themselves. And you could be a little Polish grandmother and see like, oh, but that Polish, she reminds me of my grandmother. She does the same type of thing. You know what I'm saying? So again, it's like inviting people into a certain level of cultural specificity that allows them. And now how race functions in this piece is kind of is interesting, you know, because it operates, but they're not sitting around talking about racism all day. Although some of their choices are informed by a racist world, a racist reality, you know. So also just trying to artfully craft how race informs the piece, and invites you to see race, though, you know, because oftentimes with classics and stuff, people say like, oh, I didn't even see race, that's why it was so good. No, I want you to see race. I want you to see that these are Black people, and you can still love and see yourself because they are Black.
Excellent. Yes, one last question, then we got to get it. Who's going to the show tonight? All right, we got to get you there. Yes, one last question.
I think it's very, very, very brave to work on a classic and be an adapter. You're touching something that so many people know. What I'd like to know is, how do you, other than telling a brilliant and engaging story that can stand on its own, whether they ever have heard of the original Dollhouse? Would you prefer to have an audience walk in and know nothing about the original Dollhouse?
Great question.
So they take it as it is? If they don't, how are you dealing with the inevitable comparison that those of us who know the show so well, the original?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I love that dynamic for both, you know. I mean, because at one level, for the person who's never seen A Doll's House and they see my show, I want them to be like, wait, there's a version where these people aren't Black? You know, and then they want to be like, well, I want to, like, so wait, how is this? I thought this was a Black family, you know, and then they go back and they want to see the text. You know, and for those who know Doll's House, it's not all the same, right? So I also like enjoy like hooking people in and saying, well, I'm very familiar with this story, but now Linda's not a widow. Oh, she tried to go, well, what else is going to be different here? How are you going to deal with this moment of such and such? You know, so that the people who know the story still have fun seeing the new ways that it's revealed. So again, if I'm successful, it works on both. It works on both accounts, you know. And I think beautiful thing though about classical theater, and this is what, you know, goes a little bit to your question over here, in terms of for me, classical theater operates like myths. It's like mythology almost. And you know, the beautiful thing about it is, my production does not carry the weight of upholding the legacy of A Doll's House. If this Doll's House falls flat for you, no problem. Wait 2 weeks. There'll be another Doll's House down the street. You know what I'm saying? So I don't have the burden of like trying to uphold. Ibsen did it, it's set. Shakespeare's fine. You know, no matter what my little crazy production does, there's gonna be plenty more Macbees and plenty more, you know. And so there's room for risk taking.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like that's so well said. You know, it's like that's why we keep doing these shows. Like the morals and the myths and the community building that are built into them are stories that we need to keep hearing. And I think, Carmen, to your point, right, is that like, you know, empathy isn't built all at once. Like it's piece by piece by piece. You know, like a way that really made sense to me, actually, in a very palpable way. Sorry to keep talking. Is like my wife has a doctorate and has a PhD. And when she was doing her doctorate, writing her dissertation, she went into it thinking that she was going to change the world, right? Like that she was going to write this paper and change the world. And really what she was going to do, she wanted the lever to go from here to here because it was so important to her. Like she would spend so much time of her life and so much effort to do it. And really all that did, the lever went from here to here. That's it. And that would be the most extraordinary PhD thesis statement ever written. Like if you move the needle at all, it's something. But like you're adding to a conversation, and the more people that engage in the conversation, the more that needle actually does move. So the more the people you can engage, and we just keep going piece by piece, just not stopping, is kind of the most. It was really wonderful to hear her understand that, and it made me think about what we do every day. Because there are the shows you're like, this is going to have an outsized impact, and then this one's just going to be fun. But also you talk about Star Trek, and you're like, how Star Trek had the first interracial kiss on television, like wild, you know, and there was like that the star had to fight for that, and like that, but it wasn't what the show was about, but like that was important, and that changed the dynamics of TV in the 60s, like okay, I mean, I think that those are the things that make you really have to just think about like we just don't stop. You know, and each little bit adds more joy and more life and more empathy into the world. And the more that we do that as like an industry that manufactures empathy, the more we can manufacture, the better we're doing. Yeah. With that, I kept everybody way too long. I'm so sorry.
Good conversation, though, right?
Thank
it was
you
a good
so
conversation.
much. Thank you to Justin. It's always great to have a fellow Justin around. Thank you, my friend. Thank you to everybody for coming. Doll's House is in previews now, opens on Friday.
Yes.
And we run until March 15th. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Yes, oh my
and
God.
if you enjoy it, please tell
Hannah.
your friends. Tell them to come on out and see.
Yes, please. Thank you so much. Appreciate you.